All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome again for everybody who might be new. We have one more session of the WBL Institute coming your way. As always, we're on Wednesdays, and the topic for today is building school capacity for work-based learning. So we do hope that this is a topic that resonates for a lot of you who are here, and for those of you who have colleagues who aren't going to be able to make it, we will make the recording and slides available so that you can share. We definitely, like I said earlier, are appreciative of your time. We know you could be elsewhere, but we just are glad you're spending it with us. And we just hope that the content is going to be what you need right now in terms of building out the structure for successful work based learning at your school. So, moving to the next slide. This is the landing page that all of you would have seen before registering. We're keeping it the same. We do want to make sure that anybody who is trying to get in is registering first through Eventbrite. You will get your tickets. The tickets have the link to get into the Zoom room. So hopefully that process is going a little bit more smoothly. We do have a huge lineup coming up in February, March, and then in April, we'll be launching an additional calendar for the rest of the school year. So definitely hope that you guys will stay tuned for more of these sessions. We're trying to make sure we're using the feedback from the exit tickets to continue to, shape the content based on what you're asking for. So we just appreciate you guys registering and attending and giving us feedback. And so moving to the next slide. Myself, Takia Weeks, and Larry Fleming Williams will be presenting today on this building capacity topic. We are members of the 9 to 14 Early College and Career Schools team, but we definitely are here to support the entire CTE network. So if there are any questions or follow-ups needed, please don't hesitate to email either one of us for clarification, for additional resources, or for information. So definitely glad to be here with you today. And so moving to the next slide, we are going to underscore the norms. As always, we do want you guys to all participate to make this session useful. It's important for us to know that folks who are here, even if your camera is off, that you're participating. So we definitely want to be able to have you be present during the session, whether that be speaking up live or in the chat. And we definitely want you to be able to take the survey before you leave or directly afterward. So hoping that everyone will follow the norms. So moving to the next slide.
Thanks, Sakia. So first, we'd like to ask, good afternoon, everyone. First, we'd like to take a poll and ask everyone if you can please let us know what your position or your role is at your school. So I'm going to share a poll with everyone. If you can't see it, please let me know in the chat. But we just like to take a pulse of who's in the room, and I see pretty much everyone is almost answering right away. I'll just give that a couple of seconds. I'll just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, thanks everyone. And just on the poll results real quick, it seems as though most of the people that are in this room are WBL coordinators. Great. Just give me one sec. So we just want to do a little case study real quick. Fortunately or unfortunately, we had to hide the identity to protect the guilty, but we'd like you guys to meet Carolyn. And she actually wanted me to share some information with you because if she shared it herself, some of you might actually recognize her voice. So Carolyn has been the WBL coordinator at Wingate High School for the last 5 years, supporting the CTE engineering program while teaching 3 classes per week at her school. She's providing WBL exposure for over 300 students at school, ranging from the 9th grade to the 12th grade. Carolyn has provided everything from career inventories to internship placements with the help of an industry partner in the engineering field, but is slowly running out of steam. Due to COVID, the engineering partner has to take a step back and can't provide the level of support it used to. So Carolyn has been forced to identify new partners on her own. She would love to have more help, but creating a network has been a struggle due to constant staff turnover and lack of resources. Carolyn has reached out to her administrators repeatedly for support, but their focus has been solely on improving student performance. So as we dive into today's presentation, the problem of practice, our question that we're asking everyone today is, how can WBL coordinators help to prioritize WBL at their school, build capacity for their work, and gain more support through a collaborative school-wide effort? So as we go through the presentation today, if you can, just please keep in mind if you can, refer back to our case study with Carolyn, because I'm pretty sure that this is going to help her out. So now we go to our next poll question. And this is the last poll question of the day, but just bear with us. How many of you already have a post-secondary team in place? And I'm going to drop that right now. Great. Oh, we have a couple of lone wolves in the room, by the way. $15, $20. I'll give it another 15 seconds. Okay, and a couple of people didn't answer yet, but I'm just gonna end it there and just share out some of the results. So it seems like 65% of people have a team in place. There are some people who have the makings of a team, which is great. And then we have the lone wolf. And, just in full transparency, for the lone wolves out there, you are in the right place. But this workshop is for people who have the capacity to build out a team. So I'm hoping that a lot of the lone wolves out there, that they have the capacity to build out a team. But if you find yourself in a position where you don't have the capacity to build out a team at your school, we encourage you to please reach out to us so that we can speak one-on-one and we can see what's going on behind the scenes to help you build out that school capacity. So because WBL plays such a vital role in college and career preparation, the work that the schools embark on should involve both school leadership and a diverse group of staff. Creating a team structure is ideal, and school leaders are encouraged to identify staff across grades and roles for greater coordination between academic content, skills, and WBL activities within the school scope and sequence.
And so just to pick up where Larry left off, to be able to do that definitely requires collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. We know that that's a word that you guys are probably tired of hearing, but it's definitely true. So moving to the next slide, based on this quote, you can see teachers need other teachers. This is not a job that can be done alone. Collaboration and friendship are vital in keeping teachers sane and happy. And I know most of you would agree, now especially is not the time to be working in isolation. We need each other. And as Robert John Meehan said, the most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. So just want to put a plug in for those who may feel like they're doing this work and they don't have the support. Oftentimes it's just turning to that colleague who may or may not be someone who has identified themselves as a WBL ally to be able to provide you with some respite in all of this. And we do understand that folks like Carolyn have multiple hats that they're wearing and are really stretched thin in terms of all of the things that are on their plate. including, getting students to get on their cameras and show themselves, maybe assisting with some of the basic needs that students are coming to schools with now, in terms of, the pandemic. And also just thinking about ways to continue to be effective in the multiple roles that you have. So we do understand, and we know that even though we're not able to necessarily give you an out of all of the things that you have to do, we're here to provide that support and help you with some of the structures that will maybe relieve the stress for everything that's on your plate.
But also,
Um,
and also, Takia, just to
yeah.
piggyback off of that as well, just want to encourage everyone that in the spirit of collaboration, even for those who don't feel as though they're on a team right now, we encourage you to use the chat because there are people in the room who do have a team. So we're encouraging you not only to speak out, but to use the chat to converse with each other so that these collaborative efforts can take place. You can find out what other people are doing, and you can even ask questions because we are not the only people we're not the owners of all of the answers. um, Sometimes, most of the times it's your colleagues that are the owners of most of this information. So please use this space to share information with each other through the chat or speaking out.
So as we move along to the next slide, the first step in potentially building out that capacity is planning. It's so critical to plan, having an idea of what is going to come before it gets to you does save some of the work that needs to be done. The pre-work can help to lessen the stress. So here, the first step is first create an annual calendar for work-based learning, and then know where it calls for more or less teacher collaboration. So as far in advance as you know what's coming down the pike, that's when you can start to see where you can plug in additional people. When you map out work-based learning, when it will happen, and doing it with ample detail will really make it clear when teachers need to be involved. And you can manage people's expectations as well as your own in advance to give them more lead time when it comes to collaboration. So if you have an annual calendar, you know where teachers can maybe convene once or twice over the year, over the summer for priority planning. You can really involve yourself in discussions that might yield stronger protocols and structures for collaborating at key times. So really understanding the calendar at your school, kind of the cyclical nature of events and activities, as well as, when those priority planning events take place, and kind of align your WBL calendar with that. And some of you are already in the throes of providing WBL because we're in February, obviously, so we only have 4 months to go. If there are things that you would like to have happen between now and June, it may take a minute to step back and say, okay, what do I already have that I know is going on or I want to happen, where the support would definitely be needed and useful. So moving to the next slide. The next step in planning is sometimes letting people know why it's important. So why work-based learning? Why CTE? Maybe having some type of annual meeting for your colleagues where, you can at least try to underscore why work-based learning is so important. It might be beneficial to periodically highlight that for your colleagues and letting them know that there's a deep connection between CTE and your school's most fundamental goals for its graduates. So for example, maybe you could negotiate time, 30 minutes, maybe in a presentation, revisiting the CTE mission of your school when you have your back to school PDs in September. Maybe you can invite a partner and a couple of students to make that presentation with you. The partner could highlight the growing need of the industry pathway that you have and really illustrate the connections between the technical skills in the industry and the core academic subjects that are provided to your students, while the students that come could talk about the internship experiences they may have had last year that got them refocused on school and their post-secondary goals. And then you could review the CTE mandates and really link them to your school's mission statement, and then look at the graduation standards and highlight those connections. So I think sometimes it's helpful for people to see how this actually works and understand how the stakeholders who are involved are contributing to this for those aha moments, for them to start really getting interested. And then when we talk about showcasing to your colleagues what this is all about with stories, I mean, stories are the best thing to really make WBL come alive. If you're using things like newsletters, bulletin boards, your school's website, themed campaigns, all of which make, WBL high profile for your school, you can use those areas to highlight success stories, and use your students' own words really to create a positive culture for WBL. And that also helps with school pride and school identity, at times when people kind of have their heads down. So, a bulletin board is something really simple, but it really helps to kind of underscore what students are doing and make WBL powerful, and show why it matters. So for example, you come back from the summer, and you can create a bulletin board titled "How Did We Spend Our Summer?" and really showcase some of the internships, and the opportunities that students have had. So anybody walking by hopefully can stop and really read what these students experience. And that in itself can create buzz. Or you can use this month, which is Career Month, to really rally the whole school, around what you're doing. So we really can highlight the successes and people can feel a part of something bigger. So those are just some examples, but I know that a lot of you guys are doing some of this work. It takes a team, though. I think it's really difficult for one person to, plaster the school and make this like a huge campaign. But if you highlight some specific classrooms and teachers who would be willing to share, space with you, then hopefully it can be something that becomes aligned with other subject areas, other than just work-based learning. So moving to the next slide, we're also looking at seeking teacher input on student nominations. I think that's another one that's really overlooked, is that other folks can really guide you in who actually gets some of these WBL opportunities. So, when industry partners ask you to nominate students for specific things, do you have a process? And does this process involve teachers? One coordinator said, these are the conversations where teachers and I do the most bonding. So they can really be fun conversations because, we know educators love to engage their knowledge of and their care for their students. And hopefully when you match them with activities that are going to benefit them, that's where that relationship comes alive. And if you tell the student the name of the teacher who nominated them, sometimes that can really strengthen their relationship with that teacher. So knowing that teachers also are interacting with these young people, seeing what their 21st century skills are like, what their technical skills are like, and getting them to really weigh in, helps them to feel involved. And then secondly, having multiple touch points for student projects and for products. So especially for teacher-led, coordinator-supported projects, you can make it so that what students produce will be works in progress that you also get the chance to weigh in on and support them with. So in terms of thinking how to build these out, you might have, for example, a resume day, and it's going to happen in the classroom. And so a teacher who is teaching the lesson can have students build their resumes in working groups. And that should be part one of the activity. And then part two, they'd be paired up with another staff member who they'd have to present their resume to. And then that staff member would offer warm feedback or critique. And so just little ways like that are good to kind of pull people in. It's not a huge touch point, it's not a heavy lift, but little things that will allow them to feel like they're part of the feedback and they're part of the process. And then students also will see that it's a group effort and it's not just the WBL coordinator kind of doing everything. So I will pass it back over to Larry for the next slide.
Thank you. So the next thing is figuring out who the self-selectors are and playing to their strengths. The reason why we harp on the message that, that this work can't operate in isolation is because student success has to be a shared vision amongst all administrators, all teachers in the school. That's the only way that we know that students are going to succeed. And are there teachers who seem naturally interested in WBL? Well, the only way they're going to seem naturally interested in WBL is this is going to actually require you being somewhat of a salesperson. And you're going to have to sell the teachers on the vision for the students. You're going to have to make them believe that, these opportunities are the best for your students. That is the only way that you guys can do it. So for example, if you have a WBL coordinator who is maybe planning or co-planning something with an English teacher, A lot of times you say, well, how do the two things relate? Well, from the WBL's perspective is that, you know what, there's a technical writing piece that goes into it, whether it's resumes, whether it's cover letters, and what better place to practice those things than in a classroom. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, what we're asking WBL coordinators to do and what we're asking teachers to do, we realize that, you know, the work hours are 8 hours to 8:30 to 2:30 or 8:30 to 3 o'clock. And we're not asking you to build out more time, but what we're asking for is for you to build out pieces of your time to see if this can take place. So there might be places where you're building out something with an English teacher, and I'm just speculating here. You're building out something with an English teacher, but there might be space for another teacher to be involved. You know what I mean? Whether it's a science teacher, whether it's the gym teacher, or just a teacher in general who might have better relationships with the students. Those are the people that you want to be self-selectors. But the only way that they can become those self-selectors is if you're able to sell them on the vision that this is right for their student success, that this is the appropriate place for their student success. Then there's the plugging into the activities of existing teachers. Once again, we can't build out extra time for this. So we have to figure out, well, how can we best build time for these events to happen? Does the team meet regularly? Can you attend these meetings? Like sometimes as an observer, but sometimes as a presenter to, like, whether it's the 9th grade team meeting or 10th grade team meeting, you kind of have to inject yourself in those meetings and ask for 10 minutes of your time, 10 minutes of their time. For example, like if you're trying to plan a career fair and you know the career fair is coming up next month, then maybe you're going to ask that team for 10 minutes of their time the month before to see if there are any places where the teachers might want to be involved. Now, most of the times, you know, career fairs will take place, but people have to teach classes. Well, this is the opportunity and space where you don't necessarily need them to be involved in the career fair, but just the planning aspect of it, maybe even just choosing who the best students are for the career fair or making sure how that engagement at the career fair goes with the students. But this all needs to take place as you're meeting with the existing teacher team. Like none of that is going to happen in isolation. Then there's identifying a formal or informal WBL point person. This is not the space for, you want help from all of the faculty, but what you don't want is to take up time that people probably don't already have. So what you can actually do is you can appoint a point person from the teacher staff to say that, you know what, this person is going to give up a certain amount of time that they can meet with me and we can coagulate on how best to move forward with planning these events like the career fairs and whatnot. Sorry. And throughout the process, throughout the presentation, you'll hear me say CTE teacher, or you hear me say WBL coordinator. But this is a list of all the people who are actually involved or go by different titles as you're doing this work, because these are all the people that you can engage in this work. CTE teacher, the guidance counselor, the parent coordinator, the community coordinator, associate, the industry liaison, college and career counselor, subject area teacher, E&L teacher, IEP teacher, like whatever title it is that you go by, just always remember that the shared mission is the student success. So it really doesn't matter what the title is. You're not looking for people who have certification. You're looking for people who have characteristics that are going to speak to student success. And anyone that's interested in speaking to those student success, those are the people that you're going to want to build that team around.
So just to pick up where Larry left off, looking here, you can kind of see that there are some kind of natural points within the WBL work where some of these folks might be able to be injected. So if you think about the E&L teacher, where is the most, sensible place for that person to fit in? Clearly, with technical writing pieces, anything involving the resume and the cover letter, those are areas where that person's expertise can definitely come into play. Thank you. Somebody in the chat just put business communication, and I highly agree. How to express themselves, grammar, making sure that they know how to send business emails, making sure that they know how to respond, when someone is, after an interview, or, thank you letters. All of those things include pieces of technical writing where that particular position will definitely be a huge help to you. When we talk about the math teachers and those that do engineering, having them involved in the budgeting pieces around CFM definitely is a natural fit. So just showing students where these things align and how, as they're doing these calculations, it goes back to what they need to know in this particular subject area and vice versa. In terms of the 21st century skills and skills assessments, folks who are doing advisory and those who are in guidance would be best, I think, to be able to really underscore how this actually fits in to, for example, the employability profile, and just letting students understand how they're developing these skills as they participate in work-based learning activities and events. Similarly, the college and career counselor, for those that do elevator pitches and statements of purpose, again, also the employability profile, someone who is preparing your students for post-secondary is definitely someone who might be able to speak to how they put themselves out there for that next opportunity, and the way that they're able to articulate what their next step is after they leave high school. Then we get to the community coordinator. For those of you who do community service projects, which is actually one of the 54-hour activities recognized by NICED, if you want your students to be able to get out there into the community, this person might be the one who can point them to contacts, to CBOs, really help formulate an idea that might be a whole school collaborative effort around a project that they can participate in and get credit for. Similarly, the CTE staff should be involved in school-based projects and industry challenges where they can look at what the pathway is and think about real-world activities that will help them to feel like they understand what happens in that particular industry, and bring that back to the school, and do something that hopefully will end with some type of takeaway that is going to allow for credit to be earned as well. And then we have the industry liaisons. Some of our schools actually do have partners who have committed someone to being in the building or to regularly coming to steering committee meetings or just meeting with the WBL team in general, and think about utilizing that person for mock interviews and applications as they start to think about internships and some of the more higher level WBL. So again, some of you are already doing this, but for those of you who are really looking to build a team, everybody and anybody can play a part. And there are some areas of natural fit for some of these folks to plug in. So moving down to the next slide, as we think about the process, what's the next step in the process? Hopefully you guys have the structure of some type of standing weekly or biweekly check-in. And if it's not with administration, hopefully it's with your team in general. But if you've observed that your principal often has so much going on or is so focused on urgent matters of student accountability and academic intervention, that they're really not aware of some of the major developments in your work or your milestones on your WBL program calendar, what are some of the things that you can do to stay on their radar while also seeking support? You could drop by and just say, hey, I'd love to have a regular meeting with you. It doesn't have to be long, but really just assure that you would provide the prep. So, providing the agenda, finding a time when, there's some quiet time on the schedule, having a meeting that really includes updates of what's going on in WBL, requests that you might have for like space or resources or authorizations, any new ideas that you're coming up with, and also questions, which have to do with problems that you're trying to solve or approaches that you're deciding on. I think making sure that that person is aware. And if a meeting is not possible, even just sending a weekly email and saying, hey, these are my updates. This is what's happening with me. These are some of the things that I might be struggling with. Just keeps this really front and center in their minds and make sure that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. You have to kind of know your principals' ebbs and flows, where they're highly stressed. Sometimes going at a time when there's a bunch of things going on is not going to guarantee you any real time or focus or energy. Maybe looking at where there are those down periods and using that as an opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door and say, hey, I'd really love to, before the next school year, kind of establish something consistent with you, where this is like on your radar on a regular basis is also helpful. So moving to the next slide, we're looking at, collaborating with teachers by knowing their prep periods and knowing their preferred modality. So I feel like, and I see some chat activity, and we're going to get to some of those questions. You know, you have to, whenever you're trying to work with a teacher, know when they are going to be most receptive. Have they been receiving emails from you but not answering you? Maybe it's looking at, you know, what their actual routine is. Maybe they prefer early morning check-ins before the students arrive. Maybe they have a preferred mode of communication that's not email. You know, that person's preferred mode is usually the mode that they're the happiest in and the most responsive in. So using that, hopefully you'll hear back more often. So for example, somebody who might be a self-selector and hardly responding to your email, you might think that that person is not excited to collaborate anymore, but you maybe later on find out that that person rarely checks their email but prefers face-to-face communication, and enjoys getting to school way early to have a cup of coffee and set up their classroom. So it might make sense for you to drop by the classroom briefly once a week at the time when, you know, no students are there. You can catch them face to face and really kind of go back over the details of your collaboration. So just being aware of how the other people who you want to involve operate and working around that, and not trying to kind of run over, you know, them with your mode, and hope that people are going to jump on, because oftentimes we know that that doesn't work as well. But then also identifying workflow management tools that can work for everybody. I think that's also important, because you want to make sure that you're using the tool that everybody else can contribute to. So, you know, is there something that folks use, whether it's Google Drive or Google Calendar, to create timelines so that multiple people can follow documents and edit and review? Again, if that's something that you guys can collaborate on and kind of see eye to eye on, using the same thing is going to be so helpful. Because if you're using Google and the person who you're trying to contact is not, and you're sending, you know, calendar invites, and you're actually, you know, trying to ping them, but they're not getting your messages, that definitely is not going to be helpful for you. So we want to make sure that, you know, you are on the same page, whether that's passing a manila folder back and forth via classroom mailbox, or, you know, reviewing a timeline or a checklist. Whatever works best for the people involved is kind of how we want to do it. And so to address some of the chat questions, someone had said, I've tried and no one answers me when it comes to email or setting up meetings. And so, yeah, maybe reviewing the mode, or maybe catching them as they come into the building face to face. I know email sometimes gets ignored, even by, you know, folks from Central. You know, we also have a hard time at times getting the attention of the person that we really want to hear back from. And I think, you know, rather than sit down and be like, okay, well, maybe I'll just put that person to the side, I think we also have to be mindful that everybody else is kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off as well. So just recognizing that, you know, you may not know what the stressors are that other people are coming to work with, what else they might be dealing with, and just being compassionate is helpful too. And like I said, kind of getting to them, maybe in a Zoom meeting, after school hours or right before class might be the best time. Someone else said, we're presenting at our PTA after break to share our WBL initiatives with the expanded school community. And that's awesome. That's exactly what we're talking about. You have to be able to try to carve out that time so that people in your community know what is happening. And so, yeah, we know that there are things that are working, and there are things that maybe we might need to go back to, you know, the drawing board on, but hopefully some of these suggestions may be helpful. So moving to the next slide, involve teachers in new partner recruitment, welcoming, and onboarding. So that basically speaks to, as you start to think about your industry partners, your college partners, who is in touch with these folks? Is that limited to just you or your principal or just the CTE teacher? Does it prevent other folks from getting a full sense of the school and feel really deeply invested in the culture? So when you're recruiting and onboarding partners with events that don't just include teachers, but actually feature the teachers as ambassadors and spokespeople, this really helps from the beginning to really make people feel invested, and it builds teachers' experiences and the contact what they have with your partners, so they feel more invested. It also engages you and the teacher jointly as representatives of your school, which can help to make you feel united under one mission. So, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a huge lift, but in terms of involving curriculum, how can you really help to bring a teacher and a partner together when it comes to thinking about how to create maybe a project that will fold in the CTE curriculum into this particular activity. And so you might invite the teacher to give the partner a tour of the school, or help them to really, dig into the discussion around like what the pathway is for your school and how this particular partner can help that. And so, we want to stop there and really moving to the next slide, think about ways that you can continue to build effective partnerships. So these are some things that we suggest when it comes to not just the partners inside your school, but the partners outside of your school. So creating a leadership team and an advisory committee. That's going to be really key. As most of you guys know, most of our schools have an advisory committee, but we want to make sure that the stakeholders include the ENL teacher, the IEP teacher, the parent coordinator, the school administrator, the counselors, everybody who's key as a partner, including students and family members. So all of those stakeholders should be part of a committee. Establishing a shared vision and mission. So really defining the roles and the responsibilities and setting up structures for shared planning, action, and reflection. Consider the diversity of your partners, such as your industry partners, businesses, colleges, universities, and community-based organizations that are racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse to support the needs of your students, especially those with Ls and those with IEPs. Many times your families already have connections with existing CBOs in your area, and the community is a great way, community mapping is a great strategy to do that as well. Um, Conduct an inventory, an asset and a needs assessment. So these are all through the links here, actual suggested documents that we have that you can tap into once we give you access to the slides. We want to make sure that you have examples to work with. And so hopefully those will be helpful for you as they continue to support your WBL activities for your students. And so, you want to consider the community mapping. You want to think about partners in your area, but availability may vary by school and by district. So thinking about who is around you, who is willing to participate, and then also organizing quarterly meetings with your committee partners. So you just want to make sure that there's some consistency. So you have the help. It's not just coming from folks in the school, but you're having also outside members contribute as well. So I'm going to hand it back over to Larry at this point, and maybe we will go into our.
Thanks, Zakia. So right before just before we head into the breakout room, I just wanted to share with everyone, these are some of the things that WBL coordinators are doing too often. So too often they're doing additional work in another role at the school, grappling with how to pivot WBL coordinators to remote, tasked with identifying and onboarding new partners, meeting with students of all grade levels and abilities, strapped for time and space within the school day. And I mean, this is just, and all of these things that we have listed right here are just what's happening. They were happening pre-COVID, but they're also happening during the COVID space right now. Not to mention that there are some of us who you're also working with young kids in the house. Like there are different things that that people are doing, not just coordinators, but in this space, these are the things that WBL coordinators are doing a little too often. And I just mentioned that because the question for the breakout room is, what is the biggest roadblock you are facing with building capacity at your school? Because it may be something that was not listed on the list. We don't want to claim that we have all the answers, but these were just some things that we were hearing from Carolyn. And we know that she's not the only WBL coordinator, that there are other things that can be on that list. So this is the space where we definitely want to hear your voice on what some of those things are. and hopefully you're not reluctant to sharing. So if you can just give us a second, and we're just
Yeah.
going to. I'm sorry.
Somebody just wrote safe space in the chat. It is a safe
It's
space.
please, yeah. So just to go back to this, just like Carolyn gave, that is not her real name. Um, please, I implore you, if you need to, I don't know, change your name to something else before you speak, or please, we implore you, please do it. This is not something where we're recording it to share out with anybody. This is a space where we definitely want you guys to feel comfortable saying what you need to say or some of the challenges that you guys are facing. So um, I'm going to send everyone into breakout rooms right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having this and hosting this. It's great. Really. Thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Well,
Thank you, Lori.
thank you for participating. Thank you and welcome back, everyone. So I don't know if we have any brave souls in the room that would like to share out. But just to reiterate what I was saying before we went into breakout sessions, we are recording this session, but the breakout rooms are not recorded. So like I didn't hear any of the conversations, but I'm hoping they were all fruitful. But if there is anyone who'd like to share out, maybe some of either what they've learned or something that they take back to their school or something that they'll probably practice, the floor is yours.
I see Desmond has a hand raised.
Desmond, go for it.
Cool, thank you. Thanks again. Let me see if I can unraise the hand now. Yeah, okay. So, my group, our conversation was fantastic. I just want to applaud all of the folk who contributed because, yeah, almost spiritual some of that conversation. But I think some of the things that came up, one of the hugest things was, especially for newer programs, this was something that was a concern for newer programs, but other programs as well, was identifying the roles and responsibilities from the outset, especially when you're talking about newer programs. Coordinators, CTE teachers especially, may not really have a clear idea about what their responsibilities are or what the limits of their responsibilities are, right? So what'll happen is people will continue to be like, hey, do this too, and hey, do this too. And now, already a tight schedule becomes tighter, and then more responsibilities and things just become something of a tidal wave. Another question became about like something about institutional knowledge in terms of, does the school administration, not just the coordinator, but does the school administration, does the school really understand or have a historical framework for what the work is? Do they kind of know what the roles and responsibilities are, and like have, I think, a real desire to participate in the creation of solutions in this space? One solution that came up, which I think was really great, and I think is something that I'd love to kind of just share out, was the creation of a Google Classroom for like all WBL activities. And so what was stated was that all advisory teachers are put onto this Google Classroom, as well as all students being put onto this Google Classroom. So what happens is now that this classroom becomes the single, like literally just the single place for all announcements having to do with everything college, career, whatever. And then now you can just change the headings of announcements, but everyone kind of has the training that they go to this single site for. It becomes something of a discipline thing, right? Where they just do a single site and they know where to go. But most of all, I think the central concern that our group had was the question of just like how much time, how labor intensive this job, the work is to get these things up and running, and understanding how to still create that balance, work-life balance, but also just work balance within creating opportunities for students and also meeting your other responsibilities.
Thanks, Desmond. Anyone else want to share out? I mean, I know there has to be somebody else. I won multiple awards for the shyest guy in the room, so I know that there's somebody else who's less shy than me. The floor is yours.
I'll share something.
Thanks a lot.
Of course. So we were one of the schools that received the SAM 74, the CTE initiative, the allocation. And one of the issues that we were looking at, so we took that money, and obviously last year that money was built around giving release time for the WBL coordinator. And it was actually better used this year by creating the procession for it. Unfortunately, it's only per session available to teachers. And if there were paraprofessionals, even guidance counselors or secretaries that could be a part of that, because a lot of these people do some of the work in terms of outreaching to whether it's local businesses, colleges. Guidance counselors have relationships with colleges, for post-secondary experiences and things like that. So in creating our team this year with regard to this, or recreating it, we were handcuffed by that particular aspect. So I just think a little bit more detail needs to be taken so that the money is dispersed better, so that we can better utilize the people that we have in our programs to meet all these different areas.
Thank you, Mr. Villier.
You're welcome.
Hopefully I'm not saying your name wrong.
No, it is actually perfect.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to share out, but even if there isn't anyone that wants to share out, I think that our main focus of the breakout room was not necessarily for you to share out in the main room, but we wanted to make sure that you guys were sharing resources and sharing strategies with each other. So hopefully that did happen in those breakout rooms.
Larry, can I just jump in with one suggestion I heard from my group?
Sure, please, please.
So we talked a little bit about folks who felt like there's a lot of people who are strapped for time. And even though they may have folks actually dedicated to do WBL, they just right now are not having the space to be able to meet with students, recruit partners, get WBL activities rolled out. So we talked a little bit about, maybe parsing out that role into the lap of more than one person rather than the one dedicated person if they are kind of drowning, but also thinking about the use of TOP and SIF funds to be able to hire students who can not only become interns, but also support the work, either administratively or doing calendaring, ways that might take a little bit off of the plate of the WBL coordinator. So if all else fails, think about a really capable student who might be able to assist as an intern in a paid position.
Thanks, Zakia. Unless there's anyone else, we can actually go on to the resources. So as with all our sessions, our first link is actually to the WBL Institute calendar, which will have all of our offerings from now until the end of March. Coincidentally, our next offering, which is on February 24th, is actually related to this presentation. It's the role of the WBL in transition planning for students with IEPs. So please, we definitely encourage everyone in the room to come out for that one as well, and all our future offerings. All of the resources shared today, plus more, will be available in our resource folder. That link will be available in this presentation. And the last link, which I'm going to ask if Takia can drop into the chat room, is actually to the CTE exit ticket. We please encourage everyone to fill out these exit tickets to let us know how we can improve on these sessions, where we went right, where we went wrong. If you have any recommendations for Carolyn, please, we encourage you to share it in the exit ticket as well. And on behalf of myself and Takia Weeks, we thank you for attending today. And if you want to reach out to us with any, if you have for more information, please, our emails are listed for the lone wolves out there. We encourage you to hit us up behind the scenes, and let's see how we can help you there on after. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Larry.
Have a good afternoon.